Good evening, loyal Palm Beach Post viewers. This is Christine Stapleton. I'm here on the tarmac at Palm Beach International Airport. We're waiting for Air Force One. I'm here with Antonio Fins, the political editor for the Palm Beach Post, and Joe Forzano, our videographer, collectively known as Team Tarmac. So, Antonio, what are your thoughts about this trip?
Well, it just seems that every time we've been out here, it's been A, windy, and B, the talk has been about something to do with impeachment. When we were here in November, it was right after the House inquiry had really been wrapped up, and then we came in December, which is when he arrived on December 20th, right after the House vote to impeach him. And now he is to arrive here tonight following the commencement of the Senate impeachment trial. It'll be interesting to see who's on the plane with them this evening, particularly Pam Bondi, who has reported today that the former Attorney General here in Florida is part of the president's legal team and will be defending him in the Senate trial that resumes on Tuesday as part of the impeachment process. So it's going to be an interesting weekend. He has a big fundraiser at Mar-a-Lago this evening. Tomorrow night there is the policeman's ball. And then on Sunday, it's an abbreviated long weekend for the president because he departs Sunday afternoon or sometime Sunday for Texas, where he will address the American Farm Federation, and then presumably from there we'll head back to Washington. But then to prepare, and then of course tomorrow by 5 p.m. tomorrow, his own legal defense team has the 5 p.m. deadline to turn over their briefs on what the defense is going to be. So it's going to be a very busy weekend for the president here. And then continued is a very, very unusual time and political time in America, and obviously here in Palm Beach as well.
Alrighty, so we're expecting Air Force One in the next couple of minutes, and this is about as windy as it has been on the tarmac. This is the president's 28th visit, and like I said, this is as windy as I've seen it. The winds are out of the east-northeast. The windsock is straight out. We're looking at gusts over about 25 miles an hour. So it's extremely bad hair weather. And so I don't know what the president's going to do in terms of visiting with his fans. We have a very spirited group of fans out here. Probably over 100. And they have been practicing their chants, USA Today, Trump, Trump, Trump. So they are ready to go. They're hoping the president's going to stop over and see them. And we are hoping to see who else is on the plane. We know from the earlier pool reports that First Lady Melania Trump and their son Barron are also on Air Force One. But we don't know in terms of staff who will be down here. And so we will be watching very closely and let you know who will be down here. Like we said, there is a big fundraiser tonight at Mar-a-Lago. And it's our understanding that this fundraiser, unlike some of the others, where you have some of the major GOP donors, this fundraiser tonight is going to be for the smaller donors. So the president's going to be mixing it up tonight with some of the folks, not the extremely rich donors, but some of the smaller donors. And, you know, that is where the president makes most of his money in terms of the donations to his campaign. He makes that from the small donors. So this will be a little bit different tonight. The pool is not allowed inside. So we will be checking with our sources to see what we can find out, and obviously scouring social media for any photos. And we will let you know, what we hear. Antonio, any other thoughts about this weekend?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because after this weekend, the political calendar gets speed very quickly. We have the February 3rd Iowa caucus coming up, and then followed by New Hampshire, then ultimately South Carolina, and then the Florida primary will be on March 17th. And in fact, today, if you are listening, the elections office did put out an alert letting people know that by February 18th, they must be registered with a party in order to vote in the March 17th primary. If you are a non-politically affiliated voter, and that means that you are a voter who is not affiliated with any political party, you will not be able to vote in the presidential preference primary. It's only for those voters who are either Republicans, Democrats, and any other the other more minor parties that may have a candidate or may have two candidates in the race. So February 18th is the deadline to make any changes to your voter registration or to register to vote for that March 17th presidential preference primary. So we want to get it out there as a public service. It is a very interesting time in Florida politics as we hear one of the United Airlines flight take off. Interesting time. The poll that came out this week from FAU showed that the Florida voters are very divided on the whole quest of impeachment. 51% of Floridians opposed the removal of the president. 49% supported it. So it's almost a split down the middle, certainly within the plus or minus error margin. So it's he's coming home to a place where he is fairly popular. The poll also has said that 45% of Floridians approve of the president's performance, 43% disapprove. That's our Joe Forzano, our video editor, says he has spotted Air Force One, which is headed west to come in from the west, and then from the west headed east. But and the president will see some of that division on the motorcade route to Mar-a-Lago this evening. We've got reports that there are protesters along the parade route, as well as supporters in their usual spot right before that Southern Boulevard Bridge. So the president we'll see some of that, some of the division here. But again, he'll get a friendly audience when he arrives. There are about, like Christine said, about 100 or so supporters here, and they've been practicing their USA chants and their Trump chants. So he will get an exuberant welcome here when he arrives.
Okay. We're waiting for the touchdown right now. It's kind of interesting. Antonio mentioned that Pam Bondi is now one of the presenters representing the president in the impeachment hearings. We have another Florida character now in the entire scandal that's being investigated. We also have Lev Parnas from Boca Raton. And another Florida player in the administration who's actually already been indicted and imprisoned is Paul Manafort. So it's always kind of interesting how many Florida people end up in some of these major news events. And what do you think, Antonio?
Well, actually, this is a good opportunity. You mentioned Lev Parnas. You should talk a little bit about Robert Hyde, who is your new focus of some reporting today.
Yes, Robert Hyde was identified in the text messages that were released this week, Lev Parnas' text messages, and there was messaging between the two. Hyde was indicating that our ambassador to the Ukraine, Marie Yanukovych, excuse me, was under surveillance, and which was shocking, not only to Parnas. He said he was very disturbed by that, but we don't know if it's true or not, but the FBI has launched an investigation. They did raid Hyde's house yesterday in Connecticut. Now, the question, though, is whether Hyde is a member of Mar-a-Lago. He claimed on social media that he had sponsored a new member at Mar-a-Lago, and to sponsor someone at the club, you have to be a member. So we're wondering if Robert Hyde is a member of Mar-a-Lago. There are a lot of pictures on social media of him at Mar-a-Lago, and that would be another interesting twist to the story. Hyde's not a Florida resident, but he seems to have spent quite a bit of time down here. And it looks like Air Force One is making the turn and going to be it's going to be coming from the west, going right into the wind as it lands. Like we said, we have a really, really strong wind here tonight, very bad hair weather, so it'll be interesting to see if the president takes that risk and decides to go over, perhaps ruin his hairstyle for this evening, and go over to spend some time with his supporters, which he often does, signing hats, autographs. First Lady's even been known to do it. Barron usually gets right into the motorcade. We really don't see much of him on the tarmac at all. And we have the some of the soldiers out here. The weather's beautiful here. It's in the probably the high 60s, low 70s. It's supposed to be that way for the weekend. But if this wind keeps up, not only is it bad hair weather, it will be bad golf weather. So we don't know what the president's plans are, but even if he doesn't play golf, he tends to like to just kind of hang out at his golf course in West Palm Beach. So we're expecting that may be on his agenda for the weekend.
Yeah, and the interesting thing also about this weekend is just the very fact that he is going to be having that fundraiser with some of the small donors. And you look at what his fundraising was in the last quarter of 2019, it was $46 million, which far outpaced anybody else. But, you know, still, it's going to be a very expensive campaign. It's going to be quite the battle. We do know, for example, that they've already committed $10 million for that Super Bowl ad that the Trump-Pence 2020 campaign purchased right after Michael Bloomberg decided to buy a $10 million Super Bowl ad for his presidential campaign. And, you know, interestingly today, the president did issue two tweets that were sort of ridiculing the former New York mayor's presidential campaign. And one of them said that, you know, that Bloomberg's not on the debate stage because he's not a good debater. So it's interesting that that Bloomberg seems to be somebody that he has focused on the last couple of days, and particularly today with these two tweets. Generally speaking, he goes after, and of course Bloomberg got his. I had not seen the nickname for Bloomberg, which is Mini Mike. You know, that's the first I saw that. He may have used it before, but it's the first time I saw it in a tweet. But he generally, you know, it's either Nervous Nancy, Crazy Joe, Shifty Schiff. But today it was he unveiled to me perhaps Mini Mike in those two tweets about Bloomberg's presidential bid. But again, you could see that he is cultivating that base. And you know, you've written quite a bit, Christine, about Brad Parscale, who is Trump's campaign manager, and you know, and he has always said that they're building that base, they're building that profile, and you know, somebody who gives you $5 or $10, you know, that may not be a huge amount of money, but now you've got their contact information. When it comes time to get voters out, at the end of the day, you can raise all the money you want, but you got to be able to get voters out to the polls. That's a way of getting that critical information to send those constant reminders. So that event tonight, and you know, the inclusion of the so-called, you know, smaller donors is a big strategy play.
Yeah, that's right. And also, speaking of Super Bowl weekend and the ads, also on Super Bowl weekend, the Trumpettes are going to be having their annual event at Mar-a-Lago, and this year they have coordinated it so it is on Super Bowl weekend, because we know the president will be here on Super Bowl weekend, or we are pretty sure he's going to be here. He has always had his Super Bowl party for many, many years at the golf club, so they have scheduled it this year for Super Bowl weekend with the hopes that the president might make an appearance. Now, the Trumpettes is an interesting group. It's a group of women. Most are from Palm Beach, the island, and most of them are actually members of Mar-a-Lago. And they have created this super fan club that has this event every year at Mar-a-Lago. Tickets start at $750. And looks like we've got Air Force One now within view. There's the final approach. Like we said, this is the president's 28th visit. Now, I had a story earlier this week about the cost to our local law enforcement, $13.8 million that the local law enforcement agencies in the county has spent on guarding the president during his 28 visits here. Now, that is on top of the estimated $100 million plus that the Secret Service and the federal government has spent protecting the president, transporting all of the the motorcade, the Marine One, the 2 helicopters. It's very expensive when he comes down here. So we are going to have a short visit this time, which will not be as expensive. It's the longer visits, like his Christmas visit was 16 days, 17 days, Antonia? It was 17 days. Now, a lot of people want to know, and remind us that, well, Obama played a lot of golf too. The estimates, the numbers have not been released because the administration will not release the records, has ordered the GAO not to turn over the records, or the Secret Service. So we don't know exactly how much. The estimates put it well over $100 million. Here comes Air Force One. And it's just touchdown. 5:14 p.m. Now Air Force One is going to go to the end of the runway here and then make a turn. Now I'm going with counterclockwise tonight. Antonio, which way do you think it's going to turn?
Counterclockwise into the wind.
All right, let's see what happens. Now Air Force One will make the turn and then come right at us. And then we will wait for the President and First Lady and their son Barron to come down the steps. Out of the back of the plane usually come the staff, the Washington Press Pool, and others who are traveling on Air Force One.
Yes, some of the notables that we've seen in previous trips, Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, who is a Palm Beacher and also a neighbor, obviously a neighbor of the president. In the past, we've seen, Stephen Miller, who is the president's chief advisor on immigration matters. We've seen Melania's parents, I believe, are also on Air Force One this evening. That's what we got from the press pool report. So there's always a list of notables that get off the plane with the president. His oldest son, Don Jr., is someone we often see coming off Air Force One as well. But tonight we expect also some of the legal staff. And again, we mentioned Pam Bondi earlier, Pat Cipollone, maybe Jay Sekulow. We'll see. And of course, the most well-known of the Trump personal attorneys, Rudy Giuliani, also a Palm Beacher. So we'll keep an eye out. But it's always some cadre of entourage of advisors that are with the president, including his national security advisor and at times other advisors.
Okay. Here comes Air Force One is moving slowly towards us, and it did make that counterclockwise turn, so we called it right this time. Yeah, it will be interesting to see who gets off that plane. Rudy Giuliani, who has spent a lot of time in Palm Beach, he used to have a place here, and he is actually not among the attorneys that are on the team that's going to be representing the president at the impeachment trial, which is interesting because he did want to be on the team and he was not selected. They just announced Pam Bondi today, like I said. Now, Pam Bondi has an interesting background with the president. The Trump University civil lawsuit, there was indication that it could be investigated on criminal charges, or there could be a criminal investigation, but Pam Bondi decided not to investigate Trump University. That case ended with the president paying a settlement. But Pam Bondi, as Attorney General of Florida, decided not to investigate. She also received a $25,000 payment from one of the Trump entities while she was serving as Attorney General and campaigning. I'm going to hand this over to Antonio now.
Yeah, we should also mention on the other team, the House managers that are going to be prosecuting the case on behalf of the House of Representatives is a Florida Representative, Val Demings, who is a member of Congress from Orlando. She was both a member of the House Intelligence Committee that investigated the allegations of wrongdoing in the Ukraine diplomacy, and at the same time, she was on the House Judiciary Committee that ultimately approved the articles of impeachment against the president. So their Florida connections abound all over on this whole question of politics and impeachment and the fate of the president.
Now, if you've not seen Air Force One and you live locally, you can actually get a selfie with Air Force One by going to the airport on the South Perimeter Road. And there's a parking area, and you can see Air Force One. It really is something to see if you've not seen it. And the motorcade is lining up. Trump supporters are very excited, and they've turned the engines down a little bit so we can hear. And they are rolling the red carpeted stairs to Air Force One. Here comes the motorcade.
Yep, the motorcade is coming through, and so I'm going to keep an eye on the back of the plane to see who gets off, and then we'll obviously see the president, Joe Farzano, will be focused on the front of the plane to see if the president, who he deplanes with. But we'll be keeping an eye on the back of the plane. Usually all the members of the media, the traveling press pool are there, as well as some of the key advisors.
Okay, we can hear the Trump supporters now already cheering. They're now cheering USA. The local pool reporters are lining up to get into the motorcade. We have Hannah Morse in the pool today. She's going to be joining the National Press Corps. She's on her way right now to the press vans, where they'll be going over to Mar-a-Lago. Now, we know from the press pool that the president is not allowing the press into the event tonight, from what we've heard. I'm looking at some of the folks getting off the plane. Not been able to identify any staff coming off the back of the plane yet. The press is now getting off. They're still waiting for the president to come down the staircase.
A little closer to Air Force One in the van than behind.
Air Force One is positioned a little bit differently tonight. It's usually a little further up, so we have a different perspective. It's kind of more difficult to tell who's getting off the back of the plane, so. And the crowd's now cheering 4 more years. We're going to have a really good position here to see the president and first lady come down the stairway. I tell you, the wind is so stiff tonight, it's practically blowing us off of the flatbed that the media is standing on. It's that bad. The motorcade is positioned so that if the president wants to get in it, he can quickly get in it, or he can take a little stroll over to the supporters who are in an enclosed area. Very spirited group tonight, chanting already. There could be some staff still on the plane that will come down with the president. We have sometimes had other folks come down the red carpeted staircase. Melania's parents have come down that way. We've had some other advisors. I believe Mick Mulvaney at one point, I believe, came down that route, or some of the other administration officials. Normally they come out the back. It's quite windy still here, really blowing. Yeah, we're not seeing much movement inside the plane. We can usually see from the windows folks moving around, but we're not seeing that either. Here comes the president right now. His fans are very excited to see him. First Lady in a beautiful white dress, and their son Baron. Baron has really grown up over the last 3 years. He's actually about as tall, maybe taller than his father, who is about 6'2". We have some other folks coming down. It looks like Melania's parents are coming down now. And Melania is getting into the vehicle on the driver's side, which she normally doesn't do. And it looks like the president has also gotten in the car, and that he is not going to be speaking with the supporters tonight, which I'm sure will be a huge disappointment to them. So the president, first lady, and their son Baron are in the motorcade, and the cars are beginning to move forward. So for you folks that are waiting on Southern Boulevard in traffic, stuck in a traffic jam on 995, waiting for the motorcade to go by and the roads to reopen, it won't be long now. The motorcade has just taken off, and we're expecting they'll be heading to Mar-a-Lago for the fundraiser tonight. And so, this is the 28th visit of the president. We bring you the landing of Air Force One every time it comes into Palm Beach International Airport, with the exception of the time the president was able to sneak out and go to Afghanistan for a day. But we will be signing off now. You can follow our coverage all weekend at pbpost.com. And Antonio, what are your thoughts on the landing?
Yeah, it's very interesting that we didn't see any notables. I think we had a bunch of White House staff members, but no Commerce secretaries, no cabinet secretaries that I could see. I think White House press secretary Stephanie Grisham was among one of them, but there was really nobody. No Florida politicians. I thought we saw Matt Gaetz one time come off the plane. But nobody that, it was very interesting in that regard, that he just seemed to come down just with his staff. They may have all stayed in Washington because it's a short trip.
That's right. Or they may come down on private jets and spend the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. So anyway, we will be bringing you coverage all weekend. Check out pbpost.com. And for all the members of Team Tarmac, good night.